Welcome my students to the first day of Mo Money School. I'm your professor, Professor Mo. For today's class, what we're gonna go ahead and learn about is why the rich stay rich and why the poor stay poor. You see, growing up poor, nobody told me about finances. Nobody told me how to think about money. This is why I struggled growing up and why I went so much in debt, because nobody was really there to teach me how to go ahead and invest my money, how to go ahead and save my money, and think like the rich instead of thinking like the poor. See, my goal of this channel is to go ahead and break the wage gap, teach those people who are in need, teach those people who are poor, middle class, and pick them up a class. That way they increase their income, increase their happiness, increase their lifestyle, and really get what they want out of life. The way this channel is going to be presented is the same way school is presented, through a PowerPoint. That way you follow along. I'm going to be teaching you what school should have taught you, the most important things, the way money actually works. None of this is ever taught in school. I never learned this in school. The way I learned this is through reading, through Googling, through YouTube, through all sorts of self-education systems. For today's lesson plan, what I have planned out is we're gonna go ahead and identify the problem. We're gonna define assets and liabilities, as well as give you some examples of what an asset and a liability is, present you with a cash flow chart between the poor and the rich, as well as give you some solutions and some resources. That way you can go ahead and gather all this information and start adapting it and putting it to work towards your life. So the problem with today's society is that we get into debt. There's so much debt going around in the US. People don't know where to put their money. People spend their money to impress people that they don't even like, which is why right now the whole entire United States is actually suffering due to consumer debt, due to student loan debt, and just due to government debt. In 2019, consumer debt went up to $14 trillion. What consumer debt consists of is personal loans, credit card loans, anything in regards of just loans for the consumer. The mortgage debt has also increased. A lot of people, as soon as they got out of college, as soon as they become adults, the very first thing that they want to go ahead and buy is a home. A home, because that's the American dream. But by doing this, we've actually picked up the mortgage debt. As of 2017, the mortgage debt has actually gone up to $407 billion. People also want to go ahead and buy cars. As soon as you graduate, as soon as you're being an adult, you want to go ahead and buy a luxury car. You want to go ahead and buy a car, show off to your friends that you've made it. The American dream always consists of starting a family, getting a home, and getting a really nice car. By taking out an auto loan, right now, the American society has actually picked up the auto loan debt to $1.3 trillion. And that's because people just keep financing, leasing cars, and doing it for the very wrong reasons. And as many of you guys know, this is out to the public. This is what the political race is actually trying to change right now. And it's a big topic in the US, is student loan debt. Student loan debt is tremendously huge. As of 2019, student loan debt has actually increased to $1.48 trillion as of the second quarter of last year. You see, what happens is parents and society and the government and everybody in the world tell students, go to college, go to university, get an education, get a degree, and you're gonna get a good job. But what we're starting to see is that a college degree doesn't really guarantee you anything. I've graduated with an economics degree, but I came out with a $30,000 debt. Luckily for me, I have been able to find a really great job that pays me well, so those student loans are not gonna last very long. But unfortunately, I see a lot of my friends and I see a lot of other people graduate with college and they can't find a job, they don't know what to do, or they probably studied something that doesn't even make them a lot of money. Majority of people's debts are credit cards. People abuse their credit cards. As of 2019 quarter 3, $1.08 trillion is how much consumers had in regards of credit cards. Here in California alone, the average person has about $10,000 in credit card debt. I myself, just a couple months ago, I was stuck in a $20,000 debt. Fortunately for myself, I had a really great job that's been able to help me pay off that loan. But there's a lot of other people who work a minimum wage job and really cannot afford to pay off $10,000. The average student here in California has close to $30,000 in debt, just like myself. Majority of these students don't have a really great job that helps them pay off this loan. And what they do is they go ahead and push off these loans, buy a home, buy a car, and then they're stuck in a really big bubble. And this is what society right now is trying to fight for, to go ahead and get rid of these student loans debt. My suggestion is we shouldn't even be having this student loan debt in the first place. We shouldn't have any of these other loans in the first place. We should be accumulating all of our wealth and starting to bring assets and investments to go ahead and increase our income and increase our cash flow. A lot of my friends always ask me, oh Chris, how do I get more income? How do I become rich? How do I become like the 1%? Well, in order for you to become rich, in order for you to be like the 1%, we need to go ahead and identify what an asset and a liability is. You see, when I went to school, when I took my accounting class for business, what they told me about an asset and a liability is a lot different from what a real asset and a liability is. You see, an asset and a liability, when it comes to the income statement, an asset is something that you have on cash ready to go ahead and spend. You see, a liability is considered a debt. What's interesting about this is that the school has it all wrong. You see, I read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a really famous book. You've probably heard of it yourself. This book defines what an asset and a liability is in order for you to start thinking like the rich. In simple words, an asset is anything that's bringing you income, anything that's putting money into your pocket. A liability is anything that's taking money out of your pocket. Now, a lot of people get this confused because they don't know how to distinguish between an asset and a liability. Common liabilities are things like cars, vacations, clothing, eating out, unused subscriptions, and other things. Anything that's taking money out of your pocket is considered a liability. But when people are living their lives, they don't stop and think what an asset and a liability is. They just buy. They never think about how much is this going to cost me in the long run. How the rich actually go ahead and think is, I'm going to go ahead and save up all my money and buy a lot of my investments and vehicles that go ahead and produce income, such as real estate, creating a business, selling a product, just learning financial literacy. You see, the rich people focus on building their assets instead of building their liabilities. A lot of average people and a lot of poor people, what they do is they don't distinguish between the two. All they do is they're just swiping, and this is how we go back to the initial problem of debt, which is why some people go ahead and continue living paycheck to paycheck and feel like what they're earning is never enough. One of the most common misconceptions about an asset and a liability is a home. Everybody wants to go ahead and live the American dream. The American dream consists of starting a family, the white picket fence with a beautiful house, and having a most luxurious car ever, and really living that specific lifestyle that the government pictures for us. You see, a home can be confused between an asset and a liability. Majority of poor people confuse a home with a liability. And the reason for this is that your home is a liability because it takes out money out of your pocket every single month. You see, for my career, what I go ahead and do is I'm in the home improvement industry. I remodel homes in regard to roofs, painting, windows, anything that requires maintenance in a home. I see homeowners spend anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 for these little fixes because a home requires a lot of effort. See, when it comes to a home, you're gonna have to be paying the mortgage, you're gonna have to be paying property taxes, you're gonna have to be paying insurance, and keeping up with the house, it gets expensive. And this is why I see on a daily basis people spending money just trying to maintain their home. And this is why they get stuck into a debt. They have to refinance their homes, and it's as if they never pay off their 30-year mortgage. Many of you guys probably remember the 2008 recession when it came to the housing bubble. You see, what happened there is a lot of people couldn't afford to keep up with their payments, so they went into foreclosure. They lost a lot of money because they had to sell their house, and they were stuck. People were stuck, and to this day, people are still stuck because as soon as people graduate, what they go ahead and do is start thinking, oh, I want to go ahead and start a family. I want to get a house. I want to prove to people that I've made it, that I'm an accomplishment. But the problem is that you should never, ever start thinking that I want to go ahead and start getting a house, because a house, if not used properly, is going to take money out of your pocket. You see, what the rich go ahead and do is they use it as an asset. You see, a home can be used as an asset if you start profiting from it. How the rich go ahead and use it is they go ahead and get a house and get rental income from this. If you do your due diligence correctly, and by correctly, what I mean is buying a house that's discounted, remodeling it and renting it out, or sometimes flipping it, or just buying land, constructing something, and using what you have to produce income, this is when a home actually becomes an asset. This is how the rich stay rich. Majority of the rich, if you look at their portfolio of assets, all of them are invested into real estate. And that's because real estate has proven time and time again to actually appreciate, bring you income, and give you that cash flow that you really need to pick up your investments. That's why for me, when any of my students actually come up to me and tell me what should I invest in, is I always tell them real estate. Real estate's one of the best investment vehicles that you could possibly have. And the reason why I say this is because I'm looking at what everybody else is doing. What the rich is doing is they accumulate properties that bring them cash flow as well as appreciating through that time. That way, in a couple 10 years, they sell that property, they keep it for the long run depending on your end game. And this is how they leverage debt. Because a lot of people who are poor, they don't really think about the fact that buying a house is not really that expensive. It does get expensive if you don't go ahead and do your due diligence, but if you do everything correctly, buying a house can actually be used as an asset to bring you in proper cash flow. Now, these are a couple examples of what an asset and a liability is. How you can turn a liability into an asset, and why you should always be thinking, should I buy this or should I not? The very first example I want to go ahead and show off is a car. You see, a lot of people want a luxurious car. They want a Beamer, they want a Mercedes, they want the Lamborghini. They want all of these great cars to show off to people who they probably don't even like, that you've made it. But you see, the problem is that this car actually depreciates. It loses its value. It's also taking money away from your pocket, because the same thing as a house, it requires maintenance. This is why the rich lease all of their cars. This is why the rich lease their Lamborghinis, Ferraris, because they know it's really expensive to maintain that car. And in a couple of years, they're gonna go ahead and return it. They're not gonna have to deal with fixing one Lamborghini tire, because fixing one Lamborghini tire costs you thousands of dollars to go ahead and do. The problem with what the poor do is that I want to go ahead and have something that others don't. I want to show people that I've made it. I made this mistake myself. I thought I was rich at one point. I was making $4,000 a month, and I bought myself a brand new car. It was a 2018 Nissan Altima, and I wanted to show off to people that I've made it. You know, I was able to find and buy a car that had 0 miles on it. But the problem with this is that I had a huge payment. It came with a lot of maintenance, and now I was stuck in a bubble, which is why a lot of people tell younger people that buying a car is one of the worst financial mistakes that you could possibly do. And this is why a car is considered a liability. So my recommendation for anybody just getting started into the finance world is do not make the mistake that everybody's making and buy yourself a really expensive car. Buy an economical car. If you live in California, buy a car, buy a Honda that's gonna save you gas money. Buy a car that's used. Buy a used car, buy it cash if you can. Do not get stuck into payments, because you don't know what's gonna happen in the future. That money that you're using to pay towards a car can be used to save and buy an investment vehicle that brings you in cash flow. Another example that I see is people buying a phone. Everybody knows that there's always a new phone every single year. These companies, they wanna go ahead and make money. The only way they make money is by producing more products. What the poor do is they just want to have the best thing that's out so they can show off to their friends. So by buying that new phone, which majority of people, all they really use the phone for is to call, text, search the web, search Instagram, and that's pretty much it. Nobody's using it for business. But how the rich are now using it for business is they use it as an asset. Like myself, right now I'm actually recording off of my phone. And a lot of other people who run their businesses through their phone are actually using that phone as an asset instead of a liability. Majority of poor people are just using it as a liability, and they get stuck on a payment. Sometimes that phone breaks. Now you got another payment. So this phone is actually taking money out of your pocket. So how the poor are using phones is through a liability instead of using it as an asset that actually produces you income towards your pocket. The next one is going to be a little bit more hurtful to a lot of people, which is children. Society has come to show us that everybody should be producing children at one point. And a lot of other people are told by society that you need to go ahead and have kids early as possible. You see, the mistake that a lot of people have is have kids at a really young age before they have their asset vehicles that produce them cash flow. You see, children are actually a liability. What they're going to be doing is they're going to be taking money out of your pocket. You see, children are expensive. You have to clothe them, you have to feed them, you have to go ahead and give them your time and effort, so you're never really going to have time to build up your asset vehicles. Try to build up your assets first before you have children. That way you don't get stuck living paycheck to paycheck. The same thing goes for the next category, which is pets. Everybody sees other people having fun with their pets. Now they want a dog, they want a cat. The thing that's wrong with the poor is that they want what others have so they can have the life that they have. A lot of us, we're insecure, we're unhappy, so we try to go ahead and fill up that void by getting things, by getting items that make us happy, but all that really leads is to more debt. So pets are actually considered a liability, and the reason for this is because they're taking out money out of your pocket. The same thing as children. You have to feed them, you have to clothe them, you have to take them out. It takes a lot of time, so you really don't have time to build assets again. The next category would be television. A lot of people waste an hour or two on Netflix, on TV, watching sports game when they could be using that time to learn something new, learn something about financial literacy. That way they can gain more assets, because all the poor is doing is wasting their time on television while the rich is actually reading books and gaining knowledge to go ahead and gain that asset. The next category would be Netflix. A lot of people have Netflix accounts. Disney Plus came out. We got HBO. We got Apple TV. We got so many of these online platforms to go ahead and just waste us more time. The poor get stuck with the decision of buying things that they don't need. This product is just another product to go ahead and waste your time. Stop wasting time. Time is the most valuable commodity that we have. If we are wasting our time watching television, watching all these platforms, we'll never have time to accumulate our assets. And the very last thing is friends. I always tell people, you have to distinguish between your poor friends and your rich friends. Your poor friends are always going to be taking money out of your pocket. They're going to convince you to go out. They're going to make you eat out all the time. You're going to spend clothes just trying to fit in. Your poor friends are just trying to live up to society's expectations, which is why I tell people, do not hang around with poor people, because if you hang around with poor people, you're going to be the next poor person. Poor friends are not thinking about building assets. They're thinking about, how can I enjoy my fun now? They're not thinking about tomorrow, which is why I also have rich friends. My rich friends are thinking about, I need to make money now. How can I make more money? How can I produce more capital? How can I buy an asset to bring me more money? Which is why I spend the majority of my time with rich friends, and I just try to gain their knowledge. I'm always spending time with people who are 20, 30 years older than me, so I can ask them all these questions and I can learn from their mistakes. So what I want you to get from this slide is understand what an asset and a liability is. Every time you go to buy something, every time you're thinking about making a big purchase, think about, is this creating me money or is this taking money out of my pocket? Because you're either going to be rich or you're going to be poor due to the actions that you take with your money. Now, what this slide shows you is a cash flow chart between the poor and the rich. This is how the rich use their income, and this is how the poor use their income. What the poor, anywhere between like the middle class and the poor, they have a job. They have an hourly job or they have a salary job. They have money coming in. It's going into their income. But as soon as they get their money, they're thinking about spending into a liability, which is why it goes into the liability of a balance sheet. And then that liability takes money out of their pocket due to maintenance and costs that come with it. And this is why their money always comes out of their pocket. So money's coming in, but it's going right out. What the rich go ahead and do is they have income coming in, whether it's their salary, their business, anything that's bringing in their money, they accumulate their assets, and that asset is bringing them income. And they do it all over again. Income brings assets, income brings assets, income brings assets. It's until their assets and their income become so great that if they buy a liability, it doesn't hurt them. What you need to go ahead and do is accumulate all of these liabilities once you have a lot of assets accumulating that income for you. And this is how the rich stay rich. The rich invest into real estate, stocks, and any income producing vehicles, while the poor, all they really do is buy liabilities that take money out of their pocket every single day. So what I want you to go ahead and start thinking about is, how am I spending my money? What right now is making me money and what isn't? So the solution, how do we start? How do we start accumulating all these great assets? The very first thing is stop wasting your money on things you don't need to impress people you don't like. We live in a world right now where social media runs our lives. We see somebody having fun, we see somebody living the good life, and all we want to do is match them because we want to be just as happy as them. We want to impress people because we want to show to them that our life isn't miserable. Stop doing that. Stop wasting money on things that you don't need. The very best thing that you can go ahead and do is invest into yourself. Invest into knowledge, invest into books, invest into yourself. That way you gain all of this financial education and know what to do with your money. I read this other book called The Richest Man in Babylon. I've talked to a lot of wealthy people, and the thing that they always say is you need to save a certain percentage of your income. The problem with people is that we're paying everybody but ourselves. When we get our paychecks, the very first person that we pay is Uncle Sam. Then after that, you pay your bills, you pay everything that you have to pay, and then the money that's left over is very, very small, where it doesn't look like enough to pay. Which is why I go ahead and do is save 10 to 15% of my paycheck, and I pay myself first. I pay my bills, I pay everything after. By saving 10 to 15%, I'm able to go ahead and consume more money in the long run, and that money is going to be growing behind the scenes. To top that even off, what I go ahead and do is I open up a high yield savings account. A lot of people, the problem that they do is they have a regular brick and mortar bank like Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. All these banks, when it comes to a savings account, they're paying you interest that's a 0.001. A 0.002, which is never ever gonna grow, and this is how banks cheat you. Right now, we live in a society where there's a lot of great online savings accounts that give you a higher yield, so your money can actually be growing while it's just sitting there. Another thing that you want to go ahead and start doing is start investing into your retirement. The problem with the poor is that they don't start saving for their retirement until they reach 35, 40. By that time, you accumulate less money. By the power of compound interest, the earlier you start putting your money into a retirement vehicle, the faster you'll be able to compound and gain you more money for retirement. And then the last thing, a lot of people struggle with their income because they're working an hourly rate. The problem with an hourly rate is that it's most likely never gonna go up. You're always gonna know how much income you're having. By saving all your money, you can create a business that's gonna produce you more income. That way you can save more money, produce more income, and save more for retirement. You see, it's all a circle. This is the cash flow that the rich have, is they create a business, create an investment vehicle that brings them cash flow so they can save more, buy more, save more, buy more, and at the end of the day, this is how they become millionaires, billionaires, and actually stay rich. They're not spending their money on having fun now. They're looking for tomorrow. So to wrap it all up, where can you start? Where can you start learning? I always tell people my best friend is Google. You can always just go to Google and Google everything. You can go to YouTube. Right now there's so much free educational systems on YouTube. There's a lot of blogs about money that teach you everything you have to know about money, and there's books. If you're anywhere between 18 to 25, you should not be buying anything. You should not be thinking about buying a house, buying a car, going out, spending this money, spending that money. You should be thinking about investing in yourself, investing into your financial literacy, so you cannot have that problem that the poor have, living paycheck to paycheck. And these are a couple books that kind of got me started. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, Unshakable by Tony Robbins, The Power of Habits, because a lot of the problems that you have right now with spending money is just your habits. And lastly is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. These are great books that I recommend you go ahead and start investing into yourself. So to wrap everything up, guys, I hope you really enjoyed today's lesson for Mo Money School. I hope you learned the difference between an asset and liability, and now you're able to go ahead and see what you're doing wrong, how the rich are actually thinking, how the poor is thinking, and you can stop living paycheck to paycheck. That way we can break this wage gap. So if you enjoyed this video, you want to go ahead and see more, go ahead and subscribe, like the video, comment below if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. You can also follow me on my social media, riseandgrind.mo, to go ahead and see more about me. In regards to Mo Money School, I'm going to be posting here every single week. That way you guys have a different lesson plan. If you guys want me to go ahead and teach you a certain lesson plan, teach you something about the finance world, go ahead and message me. That way I can go ahead and put it into the lesson plan. Besides that, thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you next time.